Hi, this is Gary Fong, and today we're going to talk about ratio lighting with flash. A lot of people ask about this, and in concept it's very simple, but there's a couple ways that you can actually kind of really screw it up. So we're going to talk about multiple flash photography, and as you can see here, I have an on-camera flash, which I'll be using to show what the photography looks like when I'm going to photograph my light sphere on a stand. And light sphere actually is a really good still life object because it'll show the opacity and the effect of the different lights on the shape of the light sphere. It's kind of like an egg, actually. So this is going to act as an on-camera flash, and then I'm going to make it be a transmitter only with the flash off. And I've explained how to do that in another YouTube video. This one right here is a member of exposure group A, and I've talked about exposure groups a tiny bit. On this one, we're actually going to simulate the exact same lighting that we did of this shoot with a girl, this model, and we used the color gels on the background to make the colors really intense. It's going to be just a little bit opposite, but we are going to play with the ratios to show the colors a little bit more. Over here, I have Gary Fong Light Sphere collapsible on another flash. That is flash group B, and on the Light Sphere collapsible snoot, the black, and then it has a blue dome in front of it. Now, the other reason why I want to have a snoot on there is because, as you'll notice, it's pointing in this direction, and if I don't have it kind of covered up, I'll get a nice real chunk of contrast-reducing lens flare on here. Okay, so one of the first things I want to mention is the distance between your flash and a subject. For example, I can have two different flashes that are in different exposure groups, but if I have their distance different, then it's really hard to predict what the effect of the exposure is going to be. So in this case, I've just grabbed my tennis racket, and I have my exposure group A light about a tennis racket away, and then my exposure B light about a tennis racket away. So that way I know that they're equidistant. When I do a control to take that 4-to-1 power or 2-to-1 power, they have to be obviously equally distant, or else it's not going to really mean anything because it wouldn't be predictable. That we're using an infrared optical system. No radios today. We're actually got a 600EX RT as a commander. This is the Canon system, and I have Nikon, Sony wireless to show you how to set it up. This is all just ratios. But because this is optical, this is line of sight, I have all of these the red surfaces actually pointing back toward this red surface so that we can have the signaling. If they're not pointed at each other, because it's visual, they don't see each other. It's like a garage door opener. If you don't have that eye and the thing lined up, your garage door won't open or close. It's the exact same principle here. So they have to aim toward each other. In this situation, I've got the Canon wireless system, the infrared optical, and now we're going to show you about ratios. So let me show you the setup I got up here. This is exposure group A. And what I've done is I've turned this into a slave, exposure group A, and you can tell because this little guy is blinking. When it's blinking, that means I'm a slave. Kind of means that if you try to run into the wilderness, you'll get caught if you're a slave. Anyway, and then the other one is we've got a blue dome on it just so that you'd be able to identify where the light is coming from on the second one, because I could show you the ratios and everything like that, but I want to show you what the effect is of the additional light. And so that's what we've got going. So now we're going to go in on here and do a series of shots, a series of exposures using the different ratios. Okay, so on shot number one, I'm going to have the slaves off. I have the head on regular on-camera flash mode. It just basically says ETTL, and I'm just going to take one shot, and what I'm going to see is the result of light coming only from this flash, so it's basically in the same line of view as the lens itself. And so you'll see in this shot how the photo looks. It's very two-dimensional, and you really can't tell. It looks flat, and you really can't see the roundness shape of the light sphere. So that's shot number one. Okay, on shot number two, now I'm going to turn this one off, make it a commander only, and fire exposure group B. Group B only, and not A. So what's going to happen is we're going to see a light come in from the blue guy and not this guy here, and I'll show you what effect it has. It's basically kind of a backlight with a blue. Okay, and so that's the blue one only. And as you can see on this blue one only, it's you can see the color of the light, but it basically shows the effect of one flash off camera at a very oblique angle to the lens. One little tiny point I want to make is that you'll notice that there's no lens flare, and that's because I have it hooded, and that's very, very important. In this next shot, I've got the commander to master mode, and I have ratios off. Ratio off means that both of these are exactly the same amount of light coming together to produce an equal non-ratio TTL exposed image. So let me do that. And okay, so that's two lights, and as you can see there, it's you can basically see that there is some shape to it, but you're not really seeing a ratio. We want to kind of change the ratio so that you can really see the effect of one light overpowering another. I'm going to go ahead and take the commander to ratio mode, and I'm going to take the ratio and I'm going to increase it so that the blue light is higher in power by 2, and then 4, and then 8 times. So, and that's really neat. It's very, very simple to do. You just go to the ratio mode, and we're going to turn this knob. So, first one is 1 to 2, which means that that one is twice as powerful. So it'll say A, and then I'll do it backwards because you're facing that way. It'll say A, and then it'll say B, and then it'll say 2 underneath the B, 1 underneath the A, meaning that B has twice the power. Okay, so as you can see here, now you're starting to see the blue light as it's very nicely appearing. Okay, let's do the same thing in reverse. Now I'm going to change the ratio and have this as a 2 to 1 over that. And so under the ratio, you would see an A colon B, and under A, it would have a 2, and under the B, it would have a 1. And that's basically telling us that this is going to have half the power in relation to that, which is double the power in relation to that. Okay, so let's do that shot there. And you see the effect of having the A with a stronger ratio. Now, in this very last shot, I'm just going to crank up the power on the A just a little bit more so you can see a little bit more ratio. You'll see that the blue pretty much starts to disappear. Now, let's talk about the effect of shutter speed in flash. A lot of people don't really know what the purpose of manual is. And let me basically explain that when I'm on TTL, the TTL basically means that, okay, Captain, I will give you the proper amount of exposure for flash, not for the ambient, for flash. So these guys are going to say, whatever you do on your shutter speed, I will give you the correct flash exposure. That means I'm unlinked between the ambient light and the flash, which means that I can change the relative light, the mixture of the ambient light versus the effect of the flash continuously, basically, until I get the mix exactly perfectly, and that's done through the shutter speed. So on this first shot here, I'll do one at the maximum without high-speed sync. Right here, it's 1/200th of a second, f4, ISO 640, and if I go down here and take this picture, you can see it's completely black around the photograph. So maybe I'm shooting an interior and I want to catch the warmth of the room, right? You know, maybe it's furniture in the middle of the room and I want to capture some of that. The way I would do that is I would change the length of the exposure so that the ambient light would actually pick up quite a bit. You know what? I'm going to show you something really quick. This is how to learn how to mix that ambient light. I'm actually going to turn this flash off, okay? And then I'm going to shoot a manual exposure without any flash on to see what the background looks like. And as you can see in this shot here, it's completely dark. You can't even see the light sphere hardly. It's just barely visible. So now I'm going to take that shutter speed. It was a 200th of a second. I'm going to take it all the way down to an extreme, say 1/25th of a second. I can do that because I'm on a tripod. And let's do that. And now we can see that we're starting to get more of the background light. I'm going to actually take it even slower, 1/8th of a second. And let's just see how much background light we have, and now it's actually looking kind of beautiful. That it almost looks like an available light shot, and that's probably correct. 1/8 of a second in f4. We're in a pretty dark room. Now let's turn the flash on. And in a situation like this now, it's going to take that exact same setting, which was 1/8 of a second, and it's going to, it's going to show the beautiful ambient light of the room. But also at this point, it's going to add a TTL flash, which will then, of course, be at a much higher synchronization speed. But plus, it'll give you a really, really clean light because we've got this ratio going. We're actually directing light to make the object beautiful while having the ambient light mixed in. So this is called synchro-flash fill technique. And if you look at this shot right here, it couldn't be prettier. It's a very, very nice mix of a rear light, a front light. If you look at the light sphere is extremely round. You can see the nice, those rings that I've designed to put in to disperse the light. And then you can also see the glow of the available light on the table. You compare that to the one before it at 1/200th of a second, and you can see that it's completely black around it. So I haven't changed anything here on the flashes. All I've changed is the shutter speed, and you'll notice what it does to the rest of the shot. That's how to compose a shot and mix available light with electronic flash. Okay, that's our lesson for today. Thanks.